God has been doing the same thing for thousands of years, and almost nobody has caught on. Not pastors, not Bible scholars, not the people sitting in church every single Sunday for decades. This pattern has been sitting right there in plain sight the whole time, hiding inside some of the most famous stories ever told, and it is so specific, so exact, so perfectly repeated, that when you finally see it, you are going to stop and say out loud, "There is no way that is a coincidence." And I need you to stay with me here, because this is not one of those things where somebody stretches the Bible to make it say what they want. This is not a feeling or a theory. This is a pattern that shows up over and over again, in completely different time periods, with completely different people, in completely different situations, and it lines up every single time with the same number. The number is 40. Now, before you scroll away thinking you already know where this is going, I am asking you to hang on, because what most people know about the number 40 in the Bible is only half the story. Actually, it is less than half. Most people know the hard part. Most people know the pain part, but almost nobody talks about what comes right after it. And that second part is the part that is going to change how you see everything you are going through right now. So let me start by laying out the pattern for you, and I want you to really pay attention here, because each one of these is going to build on the last. Go all the way back to Noah. You know the story. God told Noah the rain was coming. Noah built the ark. The people laughed at him. They thought he had lost his mind. And then one day, the sky opened up and the rain started falling. For how long? 40 days, 40 nights. The water covered everything. The whole world was changed. And for those 40 days, it must have felt like it was never going to stop. Can you imagine being on that ark? The sound of the rain pounding the roof day after day after day. The smell, the animals, the rocking. 40 days of that. And then, on day 41, the rain stopped. Day 41. The storm ended. Now move forward a few hundred years. The Israelites had been slaves in Egypt for over 400 years. God sent Moses to lead them out. Miracle after miracle happened. The Red Sea split open. They walked through on dry ground, and then they were free. But free did not mean easy. God led them out into the wilderness, a dry, hot, empty place where nothing grew and nothing was comfortable. And they wandered out there for how long? 40 years. 40 years of walking in circles. 40 years of manna falling from the sky every morning. 40 years of complaining and trusting and doubting and waiting. And then, on year 41, they finally stepped foot into the promised land. Year 41. The wandering was over. Keep going forward in time. The Israelites are now in their land, but they have a problem. A massive, terrifying problem. His name is Goliath. And Goliath was not just big. He was a trained warrior. He was covered in armor from head to toe. He had a spear the size of a telephone pole. And every single day for 40 days, he walked out to the front of the battlefield, and he called out to the Israelites, and he dared any of them to come fight him. 40 days of that. 40 days of the entire army of Israel, standing there frozen in fear. And then on day 41, a teenager named David showed up with a sling and 5 smooth stones, and that was the end of Goliath. Day 41. The giant fell. Now jump forward again. This time we are in the New Testament. Jesus had just been baptized by John in the Jordan River. The Holy Spirit came down like a dove. The voice of God spoke from heaven. And then immediately after that beautiful moment, Jesus was led out into the wilderness. Not for a vacation, not for a retreat. He fasted for 40 days while the devil himself showed up and tried to break him down. 40 days of no food, 40 days of temptation, 40 days of the enemy getting right in the face of the Son of God and doing everything he could to derail him. And then on day 41, the devil left. An angel came to take care of Jesus, and he walked out of the wilderness ready to change the world. Day 41. The enemy ran. Now, do you see what I am talking about? This is not a coincidence. This is not somebody reading too much into numbers. This is God doing the same thing over and over again across thousands of years of history with different people in different situations in different parts of the world. 40 is always the hard season. 40 is always the waiting. 40 is always the painful, grueling, I do not know how much longer I can do this, season. And 41 is always the breakthrough. 41 is always the miracle. 41 is always the day everything changes. And I want to sit here for a second and just let that sink in, because here is what that means for your life right now. If you are in the middle of something hard right now, and I mean really hard, the kind of hard where you are tired in your bones, the kind of hard where you have prayed the same prayer so many times you can feel yourself starting to wonder if God is even listening, the kind of hard where people around you seem to be moving forward while you feel stuck in the exact same place, then I want you to hear this. You might be in your 40, and your 41 is on the way. That is not a nice thing to say to make you feel better for 5 minutes. That is a pattern built into the Word of God itself. That is something God has shown us over and over and over again across thousands of years of real human history with real people who were really suffering. And just like every single one of them made it to their day 41, you are going to make it to yours too. But here is where it gets interesting. Because understanding that the pattern exists is only the beginning of what I want to show you today. Section 1. What nobody tells you about the waiting. Most people who talk about the number 40 in the Bible stop at the pattern. They show you the examples, they tell you your breakthrough is coming, and then they send you home. And that is great. That is encouraging. But it does not tell you the full truth about what is actually happening during those 40 seasons. And I think the full truth is more powerful, not less, so I want to give it to you straight. The waiting is not wasted. And I mean that in a much deeper way than it sounds. Think about bread. When you make bread from scratch, you mix the ingredients together, and then you have to wait. You cannot rush it. You put it somewhere warm, and you let it rise. And while it is sitting there looking like it is doing nothing, all kinds of things are happening inside of it. Yeast is eating through the sugars. Carbon dioxide is forming. The whole structure of the dough is changing on a level you cannot even see. And if you pull it out too early, before it has had time to rise, you end up with something flat and dense and half-finished. The waiting is not nothing. The waiting is the whole point of that stage. God does the same thing with people. Look at Moses. Before Moses led 2 million people out of slavery, before he stood in front of Pharaoh and demanded freedom, before he stretched his hand over the Red Sea, Moses spent 40 years working as a shepherd in the desert. 40 years. He was not in a leadership school. He was not writing a book. He was not building his platform. He was following sheep around a dry, quiet, lonely desert. And during those 40 years, God was building something in Moses that he could not have built any other way. Patience, humility, a knowledge of the desert that would later save 2 million lives. Moses had grown up as a prince in Egypt. He had everything handed to him. He had never worked a hard day in his life, and when he tried to step into his calling too early, it blew up in his face, and he had to run for his life. The waiting was not punishment, it was preparation. Look at Joseph. Before Joseph became the second most powerful man in Egypt, before he saved entire nations from starvation, before he had the power to forgive his brothers who had betrayed him, Joseph spent 13 years in situations that would have broken most people. His brothers threw him into a pit and sold him as a slave. He was taken to a foreign country where he did not speak the language and did not know anyone. He worked his way up from nothing, built trust with his master, and then his master's wife lied about him and had him thrown in prison. In prison, he helped a man who promised to help him get out, and that man forgot about him for 2 years. 13 years of being lied about, overlooked, forgotten, and locked up. And every single one of those years was building the character, the wisdom, the forgiveness, and the perspective that he would need later when he was running the food supply for an entire civilization during a famine. The pit was preparation. The prison was preparation. The waiting was preparation. Look at David. Before David was crowned king of Israel, before he built a kingdom and wrote half the Psalms and became the man God called a man after my own heart, David spent 15 years running for his life. King Saul was trying to kill him. He hid in caves. He lived with outlaws. He spent years looking over his shoulder, not knowing if he was going to see another sunrise. And during those years, he wrote songs to God in the dark. He cried out to God when he was scared. He learned to trust God when there was nothing else to hold on to. And all of that pain, all of that running, all of those nights crying out in a cave, it shaped him into a king who knew how to lead people because he knew what it was like to suffer. I want you to notice something about every single one of these stories. None of these men went into the hardest season of their life already having everything they needed. They went in unfinished, and God used the waiting to finish them. Abraham waited 25 years for the son God promised him. He was not just waiting, he was learning to trust a God who works on a timeline that does not make sense to human eyes. He was learning that faith is not a feeling. Faith is choosing to believe when everything around you is screaming that it is not going to happen. And here is the thing about our generation specifically. We are the most impatient generation that has ever lived on this planet. Not because we are bad people, but because everything in our world has trained us to expect things immediately. You want a movie, it starts in 3 seconds. You want food, it shows up at your door in 30 minutes. You want information, you type a question, and the answer is there before your finger leaves the screen. Everything in our daily lives trains us to believe that waiting means something went wrong. But that is not how God works, and that is not how growth works. And deep down, in the part of you that is honest with yourself, you already know that the most important things in your life did not happen fast. The relationships that actually changed you took time. The skills that actually made a difference took years. The wisdom that you actually lean on today came from seasons that were hard and slow and painful. None of that came in 30 seconds. So when God makes you wait, He is not ignoring you. He is not punishing you. He is not sitting in heaven checking His phone while your prayers pile up. He is doing something in you that can only be done in the waiting. He is building something in you that cannot be rushed, any more than you can rush a baby growing in the womb. And that brings me to something I want you to think about for a second. A baby spends about 40 weeks in the womb, 40 weeks, and most of the most critical development happens in those last weeks. The lungs get ready to breathe air for the first time. The brain makes connections that are going to shape the entire rest of that child's life. The body puts on weight and gets strong enough to handle the outside world. And every doctor and every mother knows that a baby born too early is in serious trouble, not because something bad happened, but because the waiting was not done yet. And ask any mother about the hardest part of giving birth. The hardest part is not the middle. The hardest part is the end. Right before the baby comes, the pain reaches a level that is almost unbelievable. And that is exactly when most women feel like they cannot do it anymore. That is exactly when it feels most impossible. And that is exactly when the baby is the closest to arriving. The hardest moment is right before the miracle. I want you to sit with that. Really sit with it. If things feel harder right now than they have in a long time, that is not evidence that God has given up on you. It might be evidence that you are closer than you have ever been. Section 2, the 2 reports. There is one more story in the Bible with the number 40 that I have not told you yet. And this one is different from the others because this one is not just a story about waiting. This one is a story about a choice, and it is the most important part of everything I am sharing with you today. Here is the setup. The Israelites have been wandering in the wilderness. They have been through some things. They have seen God part the Red Sea with their own eyes. They have eaten manna that fell from the sky every morning. They have watched God do miracle after miracle after miracle right in front of them. And now, after all of that, they are finally standing at the edge of the Promised Land. The land God had been telling them about since the days of Abraham. The land He had promised them was theirs. They are right there. They are at the edge of it. And Moses, being the wise leader he was, said they should send spies in first. Just 12 men. Go in, scout it out, come back with a report, and then everyone moves in together. 12 men went into that land. And they were in there for how many days? 40 days. They spent 40 days walking through the land that God had promised them. And when they came back, they had a report. But here is the thing. Not everybody had the same report. 10 of the 12 spies came back and said it was the most beautiful land they had ever seen. And then they said, but there are giants in that land. There are massive people in fortified cities, with walls so high you cannot even see the top. We looked like grasshoppers standing next to them. We went in there, and we saw those giants, and we felt like nothing. There is no way we can take this land. It is too much for us. This is not going to work. That was the first report. Now 2 of the 12 had a very different story. Their names were Joshua and Caleb, and they saw the exact same land. They walked through the exact same fields. They stood in the shadow of the exact same giants. They saw the exact same walls. Nothing they saw was different from what the other 10 saw. But what they said was completely different. Caleb stood up in front of everyone and said, "We should go right now. We can take this land. God promised it to us, and He has never broken a promise. We are not grasshoppers. We have God on our side. These people, as big as they have no protection. They have no God fighting for them. We do. Let us go." Same land, same giants, same facts, two completely different reports. And the Israelites had to decide which report they were going to believe. They chose the first one. And here is what happened because of that choice. God looked at them and essentially said, "Fine. You do not believe I can give you what I already promised you? You do not believe I am strong enough to handle those giants? Then you will wander in this wilderness until every single adult who chose to believe the negative report is gone." And that is exactly what happened. That whole generation wandered in the wilderness until they died there. Every single one of them, except for Joshua and Caleb, who were the only two who believed the good report. They were the only two who eventually walked into the land. I need to stop here and be direct with you, because this is the part of the story that most people gloss over. The thing that kept the Israelites out of the promised land was not the giants. It was not the high walls. It was not the size of their army, or the weapons they had, or the strength of their enemies. The thing that kept them out was the report they chose to believe about their own life. They had a choice between two reports. One said, "You cannot do this. The obstacles are too big. This is not going to work out for you." And the other said, "God is with you. The obstacles are nothing compared to what He can do. This promise is already yours." They chose the first one, and it cost them everything. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this before you answer. What report have you been believing about your life? I am not asking what you say out loud. I am not asking what you post on social media, or what you tell your friends when they ask how you are doing. I am asking what report you have been running in your head when you are alone. The one that plays when you wake up at 3 in the morning. The one that shows up when you look in the mirror. The one that whispers to you when you see someone else getting the thing you have been praying for. Maybe the report sounds like this: "I am too old for this to change now. The best years of my life are behind me. I have made too many mistakes for God to use me the way I used to believe He could. The doors that closed did not just close, they closed for a reason, and that reason is me. I have prayed about this for so long and nothing has changed, so maybe the answer really is no. Maybe I am just not one of the people who gets the miracle." That is the negative report, and it is a lie. Here is what God's report actually says. He says, "I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you a future and a hope." He says, "I will never leave you or let you down." He says, "I can do far more than you could ever ask or think." He says, "Your latter days will be greater than your former days." He says, "A righteous man falls down 7 times and gets back up 7 times, not 5, not 6, 7. He says He is close to the ones whose hearts are broken. He says delay is not denial. He says He is working all things together for your good. That is the report God has written about your life, and you get to choose which one you believe. But here is the thing that makes this even more serious than it might seem on the surface. The report you choose to believe does not just change how you feel. It changes what you do, and what you do changes where you end up. The Israelites did not just believe the bad report in their heads and then still go into the land anyway. They believed the bad report, and it stopped them in their tracks. It kept them from doing the very thing they needed to do, to walk into the blessing that was already waiting for them. Joshua and Caleb believed the good report, and they walked into the land. You have giants in front of you right now. I know you do. Every person watching this does. Maybe your giant is a health report that your doctor gave you. Maybe your giant is a financial situation that feels like it is caving in from all sides. Maybe your giant is a relationship that is hanging by a thread. Maybe your giant is a dream you have been carrying for years that still has not come together, and you are starting to wonder if it ever will. Maybe your giant is something in the mirror that you just cannot seem to make peace with. The giants are real. I am not going to sit here and tell you they are not. Joshua and Caleb were not pretending the giants did not exist. They saw them, They acknowledged them, but they measured the giants against the size of their God instead of against the size of themselves. And when you do that, the giants stop looking so impossible. Your 40 is not the time to give up. Your 40 is the time to choose which report you are going to believe, with everything you have got. Section 3. The secret nobody sees on social media. I want to talk about something that is probably affecting you more than you realize. And I want to be honest about it, because I think most of us know it is a problem, but we do not talk about it enough in the church context. Every day, you open your phone and you scroll through other people's lives. And what do you see? You see the vacation photos. You see the announcement posts, the engagement ring, the new job, the new house, the baby, the promotion, the before and after, the dream that finally came true. You see moments of people stepping into their 41. You see breakthroughs. You see blessings. You see the good stuff. And I want to be clear, there is nothing wrong with celebrating those things. Those are real blessings, and real people deserve to share them. But here is the problem. Nobody posts their 40. Nobody wakes up on a Tuesday morning, puts on yesterday's clothes, sits in their kitchen with a cup of cold coffee, looks into their phone camera and says, "Hey everyone, just wanted to let you know, I cried myself to sleep last night again. I prayed the same prayer for the 500th time, and I still do not have an answer. I feel like I am going backward. I feel like everyone around me is moving forward and I am just standing here." But I wanted to share that with all of you. Nobody posts that. And so when you scroll through and you see everyone else's 41 moment, after 41 moment, after 41 moment, something happens to you without you even realizing it. You start to believe that you are the only one in your 40. You start to believe that something is wrong with you specifically, that the process everyone else went through was easier or shorter or less painful than yours, that they went from zero to the blessing without the wilderness in between. And that is simply not true. I do not care how polished someone's life looks on a screen. I do not care how many followers they have, or how successful they appear, or how put together their posts are. Behind every 41 season you are seeing, there was a 40 season you are not seeing. There is always a story behind the story. Think about the people in the Bible we already talked about. If they had social media, what would they have posted during their 40 seasons? Moses would have been sitting in the desert with sheep for 40 years. Day after day, nothing to report, nothing to announce, no miracles yet, no burning bush yet. Just a man in the middle of nowhere, living a life that looked like a failure compared to where he started. He had been a prince. He gave that up when he made a mistake and had to run. Now he was a shepherd. If you had followed Moses on social media during those 40 years, you would have scrolled past his posts because there was nothing exciting there. But the whole time, God was preparing him. Joseph was in prison for years, not a nice prison, a foreign prison in a country where he had no rights and no one to advocate for him. If you had seen Joseph during that time, you would have had no idea you were looking at the man who was going to save the entire region from famine. He looked like someone who had been abandoned. He looked like someone whose dreams had been crushed. He looked like the opposite of blessed, but God was preparing him. David was hiding in caves, eating whatever he could find, surrounded by rough men who had nowhere else to go, while the king of Israel was hunting him like an animal. If you had followed David during that season, you would have seen a fugitive, not a king in training, but God was preparing him. Here is what I want you to take away from this. The gap between where you are and where you are going is not empty. It only looks empty from the outside. From where God is sitting, that gap is full of work, full of preparation, full of the things being built in you that are going to make the blessing stick when it finally arrives. Because here is a truth that I think we all need to hear. A blessing that comes before you are ready for it is not actually a blessing. It is a problem. If David had been crowned king before those years in the wilderness, he would have been a king who could not handle pressure, could not forgive his enemies, could not lead people through suffering, could not find God in the dark. He would have been a disaster. The waiting was not keeping him from his calling. The waiting was making him capable of living in it. And I know this is hard. I know that when you are in your 40, everything in you wants to rush it. Everything in you wants to skip to the breakthrough. Everything in you is tired of the process and ready for the promise. And I am not going to stand here and pretend that is not a completely natural and human response to pain. It is. It makes perfect sense. But I want to offer you a perspective shift that might help. What if the thing you are waiting for is also waiting for you? Not because God is slow, but because you are still becoming the person who is ready to receive it well. What if the delay is not about the blessing at all, but about you? What if God is not holding back the breakthrough because He does not want you to have it, but because He loves you too much to give it to you before you can steward it? A parent does not hand a 7-year-old the keys to the car because the child would love it and has been asking for it for years. The parent waits until the child has the judgment, the skill, the responsibility, and the maturity to handle it without destroying themselves or someone else. That is not the parent being mean. That is the parent being a good parent. God is a good father, and He is not going to put you in the driver's seat of something bigger than you are ready for. Not because He does not trust you, but because He loves you. So He waits, He builds, He prepares. And then when the time is right, and you are ready, and the blessing arrives, it fits. It sticks. It does not fall apart on you the way it would have if it had come too soon. Stop looking at your life through the lens of everyone else's timeline. Your 40 and your 41 are on a schedule that was written specifically for you. It is not running late, it is right on time. Section 4. What to do while you are waiting. This is the part most people skip because it does not feel as exciting as talking about the breakthrough. But this is actually the most practical and the most important part of everything we have talked about today, because there is a specific way to move through your 40 season that changes everything about what happens in your 41. Let me start with something Jesus said that I think most people have heard without really letting it land. He told a story about a king who was going on a long trip, and before he left, he called in 3 of his servants, and he gave each of them some money to take care of while he was gone. He gave one servant 5 bags of gold. He gave another servant 2 bags of gold. He gave the last servant 1 bag of gold, and then he left. When he came back, the servant who had 5 bags had traded and worked and grown it into 10 bags. The servant with 2 bags had done the same and turned it into 4. And the servant with 1 bag had buried it in the ground to keep it safe, and gave back the original 1 bag to the king with nothing added to it. And the king praised the first 2 servants and gave them even more responsibility and more blessing. But the servant who buried the 1 bag, the one who did nothing with what he had been given while the king was away, that servant lost even the 1 bag he had. Here is what I believe that story is saying to those of us in a 40 season. You do not stop living while you wait. You do not put your whole self in the ground to stay safe until the breakthrough arrives. While you are waiting on God to move, God is watching what you do with what you already have. While you are waiting for the big blessing, He is watching whether you are faithful with the small things right in front of you. Because the same character and the same faithfulness that you are showing right now in your 40 is the same character that is going to handle the 41. If you become passive and bitter and resentful and unfaithful during the waiting, that does not just go away when the breakthrough arrives. It follows you in. So what does it actually look like to be faithful during your 40 season? Let me give you some real practical things. First, keep showing up even when you do not feel like it. This sounds simple, but it is honestly one of the hardest things a person can do. Keep going to church when you are not sure what you believe right now. Keep praying when the prayer feels like it is bouncing off the ceiling. Keep reading your Bible even when it does not feel like anything is landing. Keep serving in your community even when nobody is noticing or thanking you. The discipline of showing up when you do not feel like it is one of the most powerful things you can build in your 40 season. Because one day the feeling comes back, and when it does, you have not lost the habit. You are still standing. There is a story I heard once about a farmer and a donkey that has always stuck with me. The farmer had this old donkey that he needed to get rid of, and one day the donkey fell into a dry well out on his property. The farmer felt bad about it, but he figured the donkey was old and the well was dry, and it would be easier to just bury him there. So he started shoveling dirt down into the well. And every time a shovel of dirt landed on the donkey's back, the donkey did something that the farmer could not quite figure out. The donkey would shake the dirt off his back and step up on top of it. Shake it off, step up. Shake it off, step up. Over and over and over again, until eventually the donkey had walked up that packed dirt right out of the well on his own 4 feet. That is your 40. Every hard thing that lands on your back, every disappointment, every delay, every no that feels like it is burying you, you shake it off and you step up. You do not let it bury you. You let it become the ground you stand on to get higher. Second, take care of what God has already given you. This might be an area you need to look at honestly. Sometimes we are so focused on what we do not have yet that we neglect what we already have. And God does not add to what we are not taking care of. If you are praying for a business, how are you managing your money right now? If you are praying for a relationship, how are you treating the people already in your life? If you are praying for better health, what are you doing with your body right now? What you do with the small thing is exactly what you are going to do with the big thing. So be faithful with what is in your hands today. Third, keep your eyes on the right report. We talked about Joshua and Caleb earlier. Their secret was not that they were braver than the other 10 spies. Their secret was that they chose to measure the obstacles against God instead of measuring them against themselves. And they kept choosing that every single day. Not just once, but consistently. Every morning they woke up in that 40 season, they chose again to believe what God said over what they felt or what it looked like. You have to make that choice every day. Some days it will feel easy. Some days it will feel like the hardest thing you have ever done. But every day you choose the good report is a day you are building the kind of faith that walks into promised lands. Fourth, and this one is maybe the most important, stay connected to people who are in the same fight. One of the enemy's favorite tactics during a 40 season is isolation. He whispers to you that nobody else understands what you are going through. He tells you your situation is too different, too complicated, too far gone for anyone else to relate to. He tries to get you alone because he knows a person alone is much easier to take out than a person surrounded by community. Do not fall for it. Find your people. Get in a small group. Find a mentor who has been through what you are going through. Reach out to a friend you have been meaning to call. You are not meant to go through your 40 alone. Think about what happened when Moses was leading the Israelites through the wilderness in battle, and his arms got tired from holding up the staff. When his arms were raised, they were winning. When they dropped, they started losing. And Moses was exhausted. He could not hold his arms up all day by himself. So Aaron stood on one side and Hur stood on the other, and they held up his arms for him until the battle was won. That is what community does. When you cannot hold your own arms up anymore, your people hold them up for you. Fifth, worship even in the wilderness. This one goes against every human instinct, and that is exactly why it is so powerful. David wrote some of his most beautiful songs to God while he was hiding in a cave running for his life. The psalms that have carried people through the darkest moments of their lives for thousands of years were written by a man in the middle of his 40 season. And there is something about praise and worship in the wilderness that does something in the spiritual atmosphere that nothing else does. When you praise God in the dark, you are essentially standing in the middle of your circumstances and saying out loud that God is bigger than all of this. And that declaration has power. It reminds you of what is true. It shifts your focus from the size of the problem to the size of the God who has already solved it. Paul and Silas were in prison when they started singing. Not after they got out, while they were in chains, in the dark, bleeding from being beaten. They sang, and the Bible says the other prisoners were listening. And then an earthquake shook the foundations, and the chains fell off, and the doors opened. Worship in the wilderness opens doors that nothing else can open. Sixth, do not be the one who gives up on day 39. This is the thing I need you to hear with everything in you. There is a picture that you have probably seen before of a miner digging underground. He has been digging for a long time. He is exhausted. He has sweat and dirt all over him, and he decides he cannot do it anymore. He turns around and walks away, and right behind the wall where he stopped digging, just a few inches of rock away, there is a cave full of diamonds. He was that close. He quit before the breakthrough. That picture wrecks me every time I see it, because how many people are in that exact position right now? How many people are one prayer away, one step away, one more day of faithfulness away from the thing they have been waiting years for, and they are right on the edge of giving up? The Bible puts it plainly in Galatians 6:9. Let us not get tired of doing good, because at just the right time we will reap a harvest of blessing if we do not give up. That last part is the condition. If we do not give up, the harvest is coming. The question is whether you are going to still be standing in the field when it arrives. Your 41 is on the way. I believe that with everything I have. And I do not say that as a nice thing to say or as a way to end the video on a high note. I say it because the God who has never once missed a sunrise, not one, not in the billions of mornings since the very first day of creation, that same God has your life in His hands. He has not forgotten you. He has not looked the other way. He is not slow. He is not confused about your situation. He knows exactly where you are and exactly what He is doing and exactly when the 41 is going to arrive. You are not alone in your 40. You never have been, and you are not going to be in it forever. The rain always stops. The giant always falls. The promised land is always on the other side of the wilderness. Do not give up. Not today. Not this week. Not when it feels most impossible. That is actually the moment to hold on tightest, because the hardest moment is right before the miracle, and your miracle has your name on it. Section 5. Before you go. Here is something I want to leave you with before this video ends. Think about a lighthouse. You know what a lighthouse does? It does not move. It does not chase ships that are in trouble. It does not go out to sea and look for the lost boats. It stands exactly where it is, on the exact same rock, and it shines. Storm after storm after storm. Dark night after dark night. The lighthouse does not ask how long before this is over. It does not wonder if anyone is even out there looking for the light. It just shines. Consistently, faithfully, every single night. And out there on the water, a captain who was completely lost, who could not see the shore, who was starting to believe he was never going to make it, he sees that light. And it does not matter how dark it got or how long the storm lasted. One steady light on a rock in the middle of a storm is enough to guide a ship home. You are in your 40 right now, and the call on your life is not to fix everything, or figure everything out, or manufacture your own breakthrough. The call is to shine right where you are standing, through the storm, through the dark, through the waiting, because you do not know who is out on the water watching your light. You do not know who is being guided home by the fact that you chose not to give up. God's timing is not our timing. We know this. We believe it in theory. But living it in practice, actually trusting the God whose clock is not our clock in the middle of the season, where every day feels like it is going backward, that is where the real faith is built. Every single one of the people we talked about today, Noah, Moses, Joseph, David, Jesus himself, they all had moments where the 40 felt endless, where the waiting felt like it was never going to be over, where the answer felt too far away to be real. And in every single one of those stories, God showed up on day 41. Not day 40, not day 38, day 41. Right on time. Not early, not late. Your 41 is already on the calendar. Your breakthrough already has a date. And the same God who has been keeping that calendar since the beginning of time, the one who has never once missed a sunrise, who has never once been late, who has never once broken a promise, He has yours. Keep going. Keep praying. Keep showing up. Keep believing the right report. Keep shaking it off and stepping up. And do not you dare quit on day 39. Your 40 is not the end of your story. It is the part that makes the ending worth telling. If this video spoke to you today, would you do me a quick favor? Hit the like button, leave a comment below telling me what season you are in right now, and subscribe with the bell so you do not miss what is coming next. Your comment might be the thing that keeps someone else going today, and I would love to know what God is doing in your 40 season. Here is a question I want you to think about and drop in the comments. What is one thing you are choosing to believe about your life today, even when it does not look like it yet? I love you all. Keep going. Your 41 is on the way.